After the American Civil War, the United States made some progress toward fulfilling its founding ideals. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution abolished slavery, granted citizenship and voting rights to African Americans, and made it illegal to deny a citizen the right to vote based on race. But this progress was short-lived. In the decades following Reconstruction, white Southerners created a system of racial apartheid called Jim Crow. In this video, we're going to explain how institutionalized racism worked in America. What is Jim Crow? Jim Crow was a set of laws designed to enforce racial segregation between whites and blacks in the American South. Beginning in the 1890s, Southern states enacted a series of laws that enforced racial segregation in schools, transportation, restaurants, hotels, streetcars, parks, cemeteries, and other public places. How did Jim Crow start? Following the American Civil War, the U.S. military occupied the South, and federal troops were stationed there to protect the civil rights of newly emancipated slaves. However, in 1877, Reconstruction ended and federal troops withdrew from the South, leaving African Americans vulnerable to white Southerners who sought to reassert control. As a result, Southern states quickly began passing Jim Crow laws, which mandated racial segregation in all areas of black life. What is the significance of Plessy v. Ferguson? In 1896, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of racial segregation under the doctrine of separate but equal. The case of Plessy v. Ferguson involved a black man named Homer Plessy, who refused to ride in a segregated railway car. He was arrested after refusing to leave when a white man asked him to move to the separate car. Although the Supreme Court ruled that racial segregation was indeed unconstitutional, the decision allowed for the continuation of Jim Crow laws in the South. And for the next 6 decades, separate facilities for whites and blacks became the law of the land. What were the main components of Jim Crow? Jim Crow laws covered every aspect of black life in the South. Some examples include: 1. Education. Under Jim Crow, black children could only attend black schools, which were often underfunded and overcrowded. 2. Transportation. Blacks were required to use separate train cars, buses, and streetcars. They were also prohibited from sharing facilities with whites in waiting rooms or restrooms. 3. Housing. Blacks were often forced to live in segregated neighborhoods and were prohibited from buying or renting in white neighborhoods. 4. Public accommodations. Blacks were not allowed in white-owned restaurants, hotels, theaters, and other public places. Even if they were served, they had to enter and exit through the back door. 5. Voting. Despite the 15th Amendment guaranteeing the right to vote regardless of race, several tactics were used to prevent black people from voting. These included poll taxes, literacy tests, property ownership requirements, and outright violence. What was life like under Jim Crow? For nearly a century, Jim Crow laws institutionalized racial segregation and oppression in the American South. Life under Jim Crow was characterized by the following. 1. Inequality. Jim Crow laws created a rigid racial hierarchy with whites at the top and blacks at the bottom. 2. Discrimination. Blacks were denied access to the same opportunities as whites, including education, employment, and housing. 3. Violence. White Southerners often used violence to maintain racial hierarchy. Lynchings, whippings, and other forms of physical abuse were common. 4. Segregation. Blacks and whites were forced to live separately and were prohibited from interacting in many situations. 5. Oppression. Jim Crow laws were designed to keep blacks in a state of perpetual subordination to whites. How did Jim Crow end? The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s challenged the prevailing culture of Jim Crow. Nonviolent protests, boycotts, and civil disobedience, led by activists like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, put intense pressure on Southern states to end their discriminatory policies. In response to the growing movement, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed into law the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. These acts outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, or national origin, and prohibited racial segregation in public places and voting. With the passage of these acts, the era of Jim Crow finally came to an end. So why should you care about Jim Crow today? Although Jim Crow laws were officially abolished more than 50 years ago, their legacy continues to have a profound impact on American society. Here are 3 reasons why you should care about Jim Crow today. 1. Understanding history. It is crucial to understand the historical roots of racial inequality in order to address the ongoing disparities that persist today. By learning about Jim Crow, we can better understand the systemic racism that has shaped American history. 2. Fighting for equality. The struggle for racial equality is far from over. Although Jim Crow laws have been abolished, racial discrimination and inequality continue to exist in various forms. Learning about Jim Crow can inspire us to continue fighting for a more just and equitable society. 3. Challenging stereotypes and biases. Jim Crow laws were based on false stereotypes and biases about black people. By learning about Jim Crow, we can challenge these harmful stereotypes and biases and work toward creating a more inclusive and welcoming society for all. Now, we want to hear from you. What surprised you about Jim Crow? How do you think it ended? And why do you think it's important to study this topic today? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. Additional resources. 1. The Library of Congress. Jim Crow Laws. Accessed January 24, 2024. https://www.loc.gov/collections/Black History and Culture. Articles and Essays. https://www.loc.gov/collections/black-history-essays/Jim-Crow. 2. The National Museum of African American History and Culture. Jim Crow Laws. Accessed January 24, 2024. https://tanda-2 Talking about slavery. Slavery after emancipation. Jim Crow Laws. https://tanda-2 ma.esa.edu learn Toki. That's about slavery after emancipation Jim Crow laws. 3. PBS. The Story of Jim Crow. Accessed January 24, 2024. https://tanda-2 tanda-miringo pbs.org/wegabh atau American Experience. Features Jim Crow America after slavery. https://tanda-2 tanda-miringo pbs.org/wegabh atau American Experience. Features Jim Crow America after slavery